Identity determines results because every outcome in your life is first decided internally before it ever shows up externally. How you see yourself shapes how you think. How you think shapes how you act, and how you act shapes what you earn, build, and attract. People don't fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because their self-image cannot support the success they desire. If you see yourself as average, you will unconsciously reject extraordinary outcomes. If you see yourself as limited, you will sabotage growth. Results are never random. They are reflections of identity expressed through consistent behavior. Most people try to change results without ever changing identity, and that is why progress feels exhausting. They work harder, chase more information, and push longer hours, yet nothing truly shifts. The internal thermostat is set too low. Identity works like a ceiling. No matter how much pressure you apply, you will rise only to the level you believe you belong. Until identity expands, success feels uncomfortable and temporary. People often retreat from growth not because it is difficult, but because it conflicts with how they see themselves. Alignment between identity and ambition is non-negotiable. Identity quietly controls what you tolerate. It determines the conversations you accept, the relationships you maintain, and the standards you enforce. Someone who identifies as valuable will not stay in environments that drain them. Someone who identifies as capable will not repeatedly explain their worth. Identity sets boundaries without effort. When identity is weak, people over-explain, over-justify, and overwork. When identity is strong, clarity replaces noise. You move differently, not because you are arrogant, but because you finally recognize your own weight. The world responds to that recognition with either resistance or respect. Income is a mirror of identity, not intelligence. Two people can have the same skills, knowledge, and experience, yet earn radically different results. The difference is not effort, it is belief. One believes they are a commodity, the other believes they are a solution. One negotiates down, the other prices confidently. Identity decides how you position yourself in the marketplace. If you see yourself as replaceable, you will accept less. If you see yourself as essential, you will create leverage. Money follows clarity of value, and clarity of value follows identity. People often confuse humility with invisibility, thinking downplaying themselves makes them virtuous. In reality, shrinking your identity is not humility, it is self-betrayal. You cannot serve at full capacity while denying who you are. The world does not benefit from you hiding your strength, intelligence, or insight. Identity is not about ego, it is about accuracy. Seeing yourself clearly allows you to show up fully. When identity aligns with truth, confidence becomes calm, not loud. You stop performing and start producing. You stop proving and start providing. Identity also shapes the risks you are willing to take. Someone who sees themselves as fragile avoids uncertainty. Someone who sees themselves as resilient embraces challenge. Growth always requires tension, and identity determines whether that tension feels threatening or energizing. When you know who you are, failure becomes feedback instead of a verdict. You don't internalize temporary setbacks as permanent labels. Identity gives you emotional stability in unstable environments. Without it, every obstacle feels personal. With it, obstacles become part of the process, not a reason to quit. Your identity influences how others treat you because people respond to certainty. When you are unsure of who you are, others decide for you. When you are clear, negotiation becomes unnecessary. Identity communicates without words. It shows up in posture, tone, pace, and decision-making. You don't demand respect, you embody it. People sense when someone has resolved their inner questions. That resolution creates authority. Authority is not assigned, it is recognized. And recognition follows those who are internally settled, not externally loud. Changing identity is not about pretending or positive thinking. It is about upgrading the story you live from. Every habit, pattern, and result traces back to a belief about who you are. When the story changes, behavior follows naturally. You stop forcing discipline and start acting in alignment. Identity becomes the engine, not the obstacle. Growth accelerates when internal permission is granted. You move faster, decide cleaner, and execute without hesitation because your actions finally match your self-image. Value creates income because the marketplace does not reward how tired you are, how long you worked, or how much you struggled. It rewards usefulness. Effort happens in private, but value is experienced publicly. You can work endlessly and still remain invisible if the work does not solve a meaningful problem. Income is a reflection of impact, not exertion. People pay for outcomes, clarity, relief, speed, and transformation. When effort is disconnected from value, frustration grows. When value is clear, effort becomes focused. The shift from effort-based thinking to value-based thinking is the difference between surviving and scaling. Many people were conditioned to believe that working harder guarantees more money, but that belief keeps them stuck. Hard work without leverage is just motion. Value introduces leverage because it multiplies results without multiplying time. One solution delivered to the right problem can outperform years of labor aimed in the wrong direction. When value is high, compensation rises naturally. When value is unclear, no amount of effort fixes it. The marketplace is efficient and unemotional. It does not reward sincerity or exhaustion. It rewards precision. Precision in understanding problems. Precision in delivering solutions. Precision in communicating relevance. Value is created when you understand problems better than the people experiencing them. That understanding allows you to package solutions in ways that feel obvious and necessary. Most people try to sell features, tasks, or hours because they don't fully SP outcomes. Outcomes are what people buy. Time is irrelevant to buyers. Results are not. The clearer the outcome, the higher the perceived value. When value increases, price resistance decreases. People gladly exchange money for certainty. Value reduces friction. Effort increases friction. The goal is not to do more work, but to do work that matters to the right people. Effort is internal, but value is external. You may know how hard something was, but the buyer does not care. They care whether their pain is solved. This disconnect causes resentment when people feel underpaid. They measure their worth by input, while the market measures worth by output. Output is defined by transformation, not activity. A small action that creates a big shift is more valuable than massive action that changes nothing. Understanding this removes bitterness. It replaces it with strategy. Strategy focuses on positioning, relevance, and timing instead of exhaustion and sacrifice. Value also depends on context. The same skill can be priceless in one environment and ignored in another. Effort stays the same, but income changes because value changes. This is why smart positioning matters more than grinding. When you place your abilities where demand is urgent, value rises instantly. When you stay where demand is weak, effort feels unrewarded. The difference is not talent, it is alignment. Value emerges at the intersection of skill and need. Effort alone does not create that intersection. Awareness and insight do. Income follows awareness faster than effort. People who focus only on effort often underprice themselves because they think in hours. People who focus on value price according to impact, one sells time, the other sells solutions. Time is limited, but solutions scale. Value-based thinking frees you from trading life for money. It allows you to detach income from physical presence. This is how leverage is built. Leverage does not eliminate effort, it directs effort toward assets instead of tasks. Assets produce value repeatedly. Tasks consume energy once. The transition from tasks to assets begins with understanding value creation deeply. Value must also be communicated clearly. A powerful solution that is poorly explained appears worthless. Communication converts value into income. If people don't understand how you help them, they cannot assign worth. Clarity amplifies value. Confusion destroys it. This is why simplicity matters. The more complex the explanation, the lower the perceived value. Clear language signals mastery. Mastery attracts trust. Trust accelerates decisions. Income moves toward trust. Effort alone does not build trust. Consistency, clarity, and results do. Value grows when understanding grows on both sides of the exchange. When you shift from effort-based identity to value-based identity, behavior changes naturally. You stop asking how hard something is and start asking how useful it is. You stop measuring hours and start measuring outcomes. This shift changes how you learn, who you listen to, and what you prioritize. You invest in understanding people, markets, and problems instead of just improving technique. Technique supports value, but it never replaces it. Value is the multiplier. Once value becomes the focus, income becomes a byproduct rather than a struggle. Thinking shapes earning because money responds to patterns of long before it responds to action. Every financial outcome begins as a belief about possibility, worth, and capability. If your thinking is small, your decisions will be cautious, and cautious decisions produce limited results. People don't earn what they want, they earn what their mindset allows. Thoughts influence perception, perception influences choices, and choices compound into income. When thinking is narrow, opportunities go unnoticed. When thinking expands, options multiply. Income grows when mental ceilings are removed and replaced with expectations aligned to growth, contribution, and responsibility for long-term success. Many people struggle financially not because they lack skills, but because their thinking is rooted in fear. Fear-based thinking prioritizes safety over opportunity and comfort over progress. It avoids risk, delays decisions, and rationalizes inaction. This mindset creates income ceilings that feel logical but are deeply limiting. People wait for certainty before moving, yet certainty never arrives without movement. Earning requires decisions under uncertainty. When thinking is dominated by fear, earning becomes reactive instead of intentional. Shifting from fear to ownership changes how money flows into life by influencing confidence, consistency, courage, and long-term financial behavior patterns, daily choices repeatedly. Thinking also shapes earning through language because language reveals and reinforces belief systems. The words people use around money expose their expectations and limitations. Saying things like impossible, risky, or unrealistic signals a closed mindset. That language trains the brain to dismiss opportunity before evaluation. High earners speak in probabilities, options, and experiments, not absolutes. Their thinking allows room for growth and learning. When language shifts, behavior follows. Behavior aligned with expansive thinking produces higher value actions, stronger positioning, and increased earning potential over time through consistent decisions, disciplined execution, adaptive strategies, clearer judgment, and opportunity recognition, daily habits practiced. Limited thinking keeps people trading time for money because it cannot imagine alternatives. It assumes effort must always equal income, reinforcing linear earning models. This thinking feels practical but quietly restricts growth. Expansive thinking searches for leverage, systems, and scalability. It asks how results can be multiplied without multiplying effort. When thinking changes, questions change. Better questions produce better strategies. Better strategies create disproportionate outcomes. Income accelerates when thinking moves from survival to design, from reaction to intention, and from busyness to effectiveness by aligning actions with long-term vision, purpose, clarity, measurement, refinement, learning, and execution. Daily habits consistently applied. Thinking shapes earning by influencing who you listen to and what advice you accept. People with limited thinking seek validation from those with similar results. This reinforces existing patterns. Expansive thinkers seek mentors who challenge assumptions and stretch perspective. Input determines output. When your thinking is fed by scarcity, your actions reflect caution. When your thinking is fed by growth, your actions reflect confidence. Income grows in environments that normalize ambition, reward initiative, and encourage calculated risk rather than passive conformity through exposure to better standards, expectations, models, behaviors, discipline, consistency, accountability, vision, courage, and execution. Habits daily practiced intentionally. Earning potential expands when thinking becomes proactive instead of reactive. Reactive thinking waits for instructions, permission, or external signals. Proactive thinking anticipates needs and positions solutions early. This shift dramatically changes financial outcomes. Proactive thinkers move before demand becomes obvious. They prepare, invest, and build ahead of trends. Their income reflects foresight rather than luck. Thinking ahead creates advantage. Advantage attracts opportunity. Opportunity compounds when preparation meets timing. This is why thinking long-term often produces short-term breakthroughs through strategic patience, disciplined focus, resilience, adaptability, learning, experimentation, execution, review, correction, refinement, repetition, consistency, and intentional action, daily habits sustained. Thinking also shapes earning through emotional regulation around money. Emotional reactions drive impulsive decisions that damage long-term income. Fear causes hesitation, greed causes overextension, and frustration causes abandonment. Clear thinking stabilizes emotions and protects strategy. When emotions are managed, decisions improve. Improved decisions compound financially. Calm thinking allows rational risk assessment. Rational assessment prevents costly mistakes. Income grows when thinking remains steady during pressure, uncertainty, and volatility. Stability. Why in thought creates stability in earning across changing external conditions by supporting consistency, discipline, patience, long-term planning, execution, review, correction, learning, confidence, clarity, restraint, resilience, balance, perspective, focus, control, judgment, maturity. When thinking shifts from consumption to creation, earning changes direction entirely. Consumption-focused thinking spends first and saves later. Creation-focused thinking invests first and multiplies later. This shift reorders priorities and outcomes. Creators think in assets, systems, and value creation. Consumers think in expenses, relief, and temporary comfort. Income favors creators because creation produces leverage. Leverage amplifies effort and reward. Thinking like a creator transforms how money is used, earned, and retained, gradually reshaping financial identity and long-term economic trajectory through disciplined allocation, reinvestment, patience, vision, systems, strategy, learning, execution, refinement, consistency, measurement, focus, ownership, responsibility, awareness, intention, leverage, growth. Decision is the turning point because nothing changes until something is chosen. Life does not respond to wishes, hopes, or intentions. It responds to decisions backed by movement. Most people wait for clarity, confidence, or perfect conditions before deciding, but clarity follows commitment, not the other way around. Indecision feels safe because it avoids responsibility, yet it quietly guarantees stagnation. Every meaningful shift in life begins the moment someone decides they are no longer available for their current results. Decision creates direction. Direction, organi, zest, energy. Without decision, effort scatters and potential remains dormant, unused, and unrealized despite capability, opportunity, or talent being present and accessible. Indecision is costly because it consumes time without producing progress. While people hesitate, opportunities pass, momentum fades, and self-trust erodes. Each delayed decision trains the mind to doubt itself. Over time, hesitation becomes an identity. Decisive people are not braver, they are clearer about what they will tolerate. They understand that wrong decisions can be corrected, but no decision cannot. Progress favors those willing to move with imperfect information. Waiting for guarantees keeps people stuck in preparation mode forever. Decision converts learning into action. Action produces feedback. Feedback produces refinement. Refinement produces growth that hesitation can never deliver. Decision separates intention from ownership. Intention says, I want, but decision says, I will. Ownership begins when excuses end. Once a decision is made, responsibility shifts inward. There is no one left to blame and nothing left to wait for. This internal shift changes behavior immediately. Standards rise because inconsistency now has consequences. Decision forces alignment between words and actions. It removes the option of drifting. People often fear decision because it exposes commitment, but commitment is what gives power to effort. Energy multiplies when the mind stops negotiating and starts executing with clarity and resolve. Every level of success requires a new set of decisions. What worked before will not work next. Growth demands choosing discomfort over familiarity. People often stay loyal to old decisions even when they no longer serve them. Deciding again is not failure, it is evolution. The refusal to update decisions is what creates stagnation. Decisive people regularly reassess and choose again based on current goals, not past comfort. They understand that decision is not a one-time event, but a practice. Repeated decisions compound into direction, identity, and momentum over time through consistent alignment between intent, action, review, correction, and forward movement. Decision clarifies priorities by eliminating alternatives. When everything is an option, nothing receives focus. Focus is the result of decided constraints. Saying yes to one path requires saying no to others. This is where most people struggle, because saying no feels like loss. In reality, lack of decision causes greater loss through dilution of effort. Decided people move faster because they are not constantly reconsidering. They conserve mental energy for execution. Execution sharpens skill. Skill increases confidence. Confidence reinforces decision. This loop accelerates progress, while indecision creates friction, fatigue, and frustration through constant internal debate and scattered effort. Decision also reshapes self-trust. Every kept decision strengthens confidence. Every broken decision weakens it. Self-trust is built through follow-through, not affirmations. When you decide and act consistently, the mind learns that your word matters. This internal credibility becomes external authority. People who trust themselves move differently. They speak clearly, act promptly, and recover quickly from mistakes. They do not collapse under uncertainty because they rely on adaptability rather than certainty. Decision trains adaptability. Adaptability sustains momentum. Momentum attracts opportunity. Opportunity rewards preparedness. Preparedness begins with a firm internal commitment to act, adjust, and continue regardless of temporary outcomes. Fear often disguises itself as logic during decision making. It presents endless reasons to wait, research more, or seek approval. Logic without movement becomes paralysis. Decisive people acknowledge fear, but refuse to let it lead. They decide with fear present. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it. Each decision made under uncertainty expands tolerance for discomfort. This expansion is necessary for growth. Comfort zones shrink potential. Decisions stretch capacity. Capacity increases competence. Competence attracts higher level challenges. Avoiding decision avoids challenge, and avoiding challenge avoids growth, keeping people trapped in cycles of preparation without progress. Decision is the bridge between possibility and reality. Possibility exists everywhere, but only decisions turn it into outcomes. Until a decision is made, potential remains theoretical. Once decided, potential becomes actionable. The quality of life is directly connected to the quality of decisions made consistently over time. Small decisions shape habits. Habits shape identity. Identity shapes results. Waiting delays transformation. Decision initiates it. Movement follows decision naturally when commitment is real. Deciding does not guarantee immediate success, but it guarantees direction, learning, momentum, and the chance to build something better than what exists now through action, adjustment, persistence, and forward motion. Standards control outcomes because what you accept repeatedly becomes what you experience consistently. Life always moves toward the level of tolerance you allow. If your standards are low, your results will reflect that without negotiation. People often want better outcomes without raising expectations of themselves. Standards define behavior before motivation ever appears. When standards are unclear, inconsistency feels acceptable. When standards are firm, excuses lose power. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your standards. Every action, habit, and decision aligns with the minimum you are willing to live with, consciously or unconsciously shaping results. Low standards create chaos because they remove boundaries. Without boundaries, energy leaks into distractions, poor choices, and reactive behavior. High standards simplify life by eliminating options that don't align. They reduce decision fatigue because expectations are already set. When standards are high, discipline becomes natural instead of forced. You don't negotiate with temptation, you dismiss it. Standards act as filters, determining what stays and what goes. They decide how you manage time, relationships, money, and effort. Outcomes improve not because circumstances change, but because behavior aligns with a higher internal agreement about what is acceptable. People confuse standards with pressure, but standards actually create freedom. Pressure comes from inconsistency and regret. Standards remove regret by setting clear expectations in advance. When standards are low, People rely on willpower. Willpower is unreliable and temporary. Standards remove the need for willpower by automating behavior. You don't argue with yourself when the rule is clear. Standards protect future progress from momentary emotion. They keep actions aligned even when motivation fades. Motivation fluctuates, but standards remain. Consistent standards produce consistent actions, and consistent actions compound into predictable outcomes over time. Standards shape identity because repeated behavior reinforces self-image. When you consistently meet higher standards, confidence grows naturally. Confidence is evidence-based, not imagined. Every time you honor a standard, you send a signal to yourself that your word matters. That signal builds self-respect. Self-respect changes posture, language, and presence. People with high standards move differently because they trust themselves. They don't need external validation. Outcomes improve because self-trust influences decision-making speed and quality. Standards create internal order, and internal order reflects externally as stability, credibility, and momentum in results. Many people lower standards to avoid discomfort, not realizing discomfort is temporary while consequences are permanent. Growth always demands a period of adjustment. Raising standards initially feels restrictive, but over time it feels empowering. The discomfort is not punishment, it is recalibration. Standards stretch capacity. Capacity increases competence. Competence increases confidence. Confidence attracts opportunity. Lowering standards avoids discomfort, but also avoids growth. The price of comfort is stagnation. The reward of higher standards is expansion. Outcomes improve as the nervous system adapts to higher expectations and normalizes excellence as the new baseline. Standards influence relationships because people treat you according to what you tolerate. When standards are low, disrespect feels common. When standards are high, disrespect feels rare. You teach others how to engage with you through consistency. Standards remove the need for constant correction because expectations are visible through behavior. People adjust or exit. Both outcomes are beneficial. Relationships aligned with higher standards support growth. Misaligned relationships drain energy. Outcomes improve when energy is preserved and directed toward meaningful goals instead of conflict management, resentment, or recovery from avoidable situations caused by unclear or compromised expectations. Professional outcomes are directly linked to standards around quality, consistency, and execution. Average standards produce average results regardless of talent. Talent without standards leads to wasted potential. High standards force refinement. Refinement improves skill. Skill increases value. Value attracts reward. The market responds to consistency more than intensity. Standards ensure consistency. Showing up once impresses. Showing up every time builds trust. Trust drives opportunity. Opportunity compounds. Outcomes shift when standards are raised quietly and enforced consistently without announcement. Excellence becomes routine, not exceptional, because standards redefine what normal performance looks like daily. Raising standards requires honesty about current results. Denial keeps standards low by justifying mediocrity. Awareness creates the opportunity to choose differently. Standards are choices repeated until they become automatic. Every improvement begins with a decision to no longer tolerate a specific behavior or outcome. Removing tolerance removes repetition. Removing repetition changes trajectory. Standards don't change overnight, but they change outcomes over time with certainty. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is often not skill, knowledge, or luck, but the level of behavior you are consistently willing to accept. You were built to create, not compete, because competition keeps your focus external while creation turns it inward. When you compete, you measure yourself against others and allow comparison to define your pace, confidence, and direction. Creation ignores comparison and prioritizes contribution. Competing reacts to what already exists. Creating introduces something new. Most people stay trapped in competition because it feels safer than originality. Creation requires responsibility, vision, and courage. It demands thinking independently rather than following patterns. When you create, you stop asking how to win and start asking how to serve, solve, and add something meaningful to the world through your abilities. Competition is limited because there is always someone ahead, someone faster, someone louder. That mindset produces anxiety and scarcity. Creation operates from abundance. It assumes there is room for your ideas, your voice, and your solutions. When you create, you no longer chase relevance, you define it. Your value stops being dependent on outperforming others and becomes rooted in usefulness. This shift changes motivation. Instead of proving worth, you express it. Energy moves from comparison to innovation. Innovation produces differentiation. Differentiation removes price pressure. Creation allows you to build something aligned with your strengths instead of forcing yourself into crowded lanes. People who compete often copy, and copying keeps them behind. By the time something is copied, the originator has already moved forward. Creation places you ahead because it begins with insight rather than imitation. Insight comes from observation, curiosity, and understanding problems deeply. Creators pay attention to gaps, not trends. They look for what is missing, not what is popular. This mindset leads to original solutions. Original solutions attract attention naturally. Attention converts into opportunity. Opportunity grows when originality meets consistency, clarity, and commitment to refining what you build over time. Creation requires trusting your perspective even when it is unproven. Many people abandon ideas too early because they seek validation before execution. Creators understand that validation follows results, not the other way around. They build quietly, test deliberately, and improve continuously. Creation accepts imperfection as part of the process. Competition avoids imperfection by hiding behind comparison. Creating something meaningful requires patience because value compounds slowly at first. Early stages often feel lonely and uncertain. That uncertainty is not a sign of failure. It is a sign you are doing something original instead of repeating what already exists. And you create, you shift from consumption to production. Consumption fills time, creation builds assets. Assets generate long-term value beyond immediate effort. Competing often leads to burnout because the finish line keeps moving. Creating leads to sustainability because what you build continues to serve even when you rest. This is where leverage appears. Leverage is born from creation, not competition. Systems, content, products, and frameworks all come from a creator mindset. Each creation becomes a foundation for the next. Momentum builds because progress is cumulative rather than repetitive. Creation also reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as a participant and start seeing yourself as a contributor. That shift changes how you speak, decide, and show up. Contributors don't wait for permission, they assume responsibility. Responsibility increases confidence. Confidence increases action. Action produces results. Results reinforce identity. This loop strengthens over time. Competing weakens identity because it constantly reminds you of what you are not. Creating strengthens identity by focusing on what you are building. Identity grounded in creation is stable because it is internally defined rather than externally measured. Many people avoid creation because it exposes them. Competing allows hiding behind trends and crowds. Creating puts your thinking on display. That vulnerability feels risky, but it is also powerful. Visibility attracts feedback. Feedback fuels improvement. Improvement sharpens effectiveness. Effectiveness increases impact. Impact expands reach. Creation makes growth unavoidable because it demands engagement with reality. Avoiding creation avoids feedback, and avoiding feedback avoids growth. The discomfort of being seen as temporary. The reward of building something meaningful lasts longer than approval gained from fitting in. Creation demands long-term thinking. Competitors chase short-term wins. Creators build ecosystems. They think in years instead of weeks. This patience allows better decisions. Better decisions produce durable outcomes. Durable outcomes create freedom. Freedom is rarely found in competition because competition never ends. Creation ends cycles by establishing ownership. Ownership creates control. Control allows alignment between values, effort, and direction. When you create, you define success on your terms. That definition guides action consistently. Over time, what you create begins to speak for you opening doors without forcing comparison or rivalry,